shadows. What do you want from me?
Hi folks, and welcome to Coffee Beans and Music Scenes episode number 3. I am one of the hosts, Smudge, and it's a great pleasure to welcome my co-host, Mr. Tony Ross. How you doing, mate?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Pleased to be here as usual on a bright and rainy Sunday morning.
It's it's a bit nuts, isn't it? It's kind of, we've been saying here over the last few days, Europe is roasting, wildfires. It's an absolute nightmare. So if you're in those parts of the world, make sure you keep safe. But where we are in the UK, or where I am in the UK, we've had absolute rain, and it sounds like you're going to get a load of it today, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. We have very similar weather here. It's been cloudy and raining, and you do feel sorry for people, obviously, in places like Greece in Greece and Rhodes. They're having a lot of problems today, aren't they, with wildfires? So I feel that I'm slightly fortunate here, sitting here.
Absolutely. So just to reiterate, make sure you all keep safe and well, and all our thoughts go out to those affected with the extreme weather events that are happening all over the world. It seems like it's going a bit nuts at the moment. So we've got a great news show for you today. We've got 6 great news stories, and followed by the spotlight topic, which is secret. Because I want to see Tony's reaction to the spotlight topic later on, and we'll see if we can capture it, and we'll see if we can get him. Let's see if we can get him agitated for once. That'll be great fun, won't it?
So agitated.
So for the first news topic, I have got the SSL X EQ 2 plugin. So once again, it sounds like I'm a SSL fanboy because I keep coming up with these SSL plugins, but there's another one on offer through Plugin Boutique, and it's the X EQ 2, and it's a fully parametric 24-band EQ. I have it and I use it loads. I literally, it's my go-to. I know a lot of people like the what do you call it? The Fab Filter Pro EQ or whatever it's called. It's very, very similar in vein, but it's an absolutely fantastic plugin. It's a 24-band fully parametric EQ. They classify it as mastering grade. Whatever you call mastering grade EQ, that's what they say it is. But it's got 17 different EQ types and filter shapes. It's got anti-cramping algorithms, so you can preserve that high frequency information, as they say. It's optimized for light and efficient CPU use. The great thing I love is the mid-side and independent left-right processing, and this is great because I think for me, having the ability to go in and do your stereo EQ moves, but you also have the mid-side functionality, is just wonderful, and that's really where I would use it and where I use it in my mastering sessions. So I've got the ability to do the stereo processing and the mid-side functionality all in one particular plugin. It says pinpoint trouble frequencies with band soloing. Yes, that is a great feature. So you can go through, when you set your EQ points, you can actually solo that EQ band. So you can go through and really hone in on certain frequencies. And it says you've got a real-time visual frequency analysis. It really is a great plugin. And for me, that it often goes on sale, and it's coming through at a whopping 88% off, so via Plugin Boutique.
That's amazing.
So as of today and up until the 31st of July, it's an offer for £32.99.
Wow.
It's usually, I looked on the SSL website, and it's retailed at $299.99.
Yeah.
So to get it for $32.99, it is a steal. It really is. But it's another one of those plugins where, from personal experience, it's the usability of it is just really well made. And I say this, I'm trying to explain this, and it's probably easy. It would be easier if I can give you some kind of example, but I'm not going to do that right now. But when you set your band, it's got your usual EQ point, and you can use the mouse, and you can click it on the screen. But if you just set your point where you want the EQ, and if you click on the point, you kind of get this little UI screen, and it's almost got these roller adjusters. So if you, rather than actually going through and moving the actual point itself, you can go up to one of these roller adjusters, click on the adjuster, and use your mouse scroll wheel. and it will fine tune either the Q or the frequency curve, which I think is just really good. So if you want to get really really fine tune that EQ point, rather than clicking and dragging the mouse point, using that almost scroll wheel ability just really allows you to hone in on that particular frequency you want. So yeah, it is what it is. It's a 24 band EQ. It's got a lot of the bells and whistles, no dynamic functions, but it's just a great plugin for $32.99. I think it's an absolute steal.
Yeah, I think at this point, Smudge, I think you need to point out that you are no way affiliated with SSL. You get no kickback from SSL. I think you need one of those standard disclaimers that everyone puts out in their videos saying, all these opinions are my own true opinions and I'm not paid to review this plugin, etc., etc.
Yes, very well pointed out. I'm in no way affiliated with SSL products, although SSL, if you're watching, yeah, no, it's just
yes, please.
I think I mentioned it in the last video when we did the previous SSL plugin. You do get these; they come up on offer. And last month it was the bus compressor and the XEQ2. I think I actually bought it in one of their last offers. When they're 300 quid, it's kind of like I look at it and go, ooh, I don't know about that. I'm going to get that one past the missus. But when they're on $32.99, It's kind of like it's a bit of a no-brainer. So yeah, very well pointed out. I'm in no way affiliated with SSL. Although if you do use the link below, there is a plugin boutique link where we will get a small affiliate commission at no additional cost to you.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah, you said it was a 24 parametric EQ.
Yeah.
Which is there are not many plugins out there where you can get 24 parametric EQs. The other thing I wanted is completely unrelated, but you mentioned something about Pro Filter, whatever the EQ is called, and I think it's pretty much standard, isn't it? I was scrolling through my Instagram the other day, as one does. A complete Fab Filter bundle, buy now, €19. And I thought, that's got to be a scam, right? I mean, these plugins, like, I think actually the standard mix and master bundle is like €1,000 or something. So watch out for those scams on Instagram. I went to the Fab Filter site, double checked. Of course, there was no special offer for €19 for their complete bundle. If you come across that when you're scrolling through Instagram, I would probably advise and give that a wide berth. Definitely don't buy it anyway.
Absolutely. Proceed with caution. If it's too good to be true, generally it is too good to be true.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Fantastic. What's up first from you then, Tony?
Well, I found something. I've used plugins in the past, especially when I was first starting out with my journey on audio production, plugins by a company called Black Rooster. And I have their website bookmarked, and they have a very, very good summer sale for 2023 going on. They have lots of plugins for €19. Now, I think some people have heard of Black Rooster. I've certainly used one of their plugins in the past, and the plugin that I used was a Tape Echo plugin, which I think is modeled on a very, very famous traditional Roland Tape Echo unit. And that was before I purchased the IK multimedia version. But I still use it occasionally, once or twice. But their site is worth checking out because they do actually have some very good dynamics processing plugins, all for €19. I don't know what the original price was, €59, so reduced to €19. But these plugins seem to have all an analog flavor. And I've used them and I can recommend them. And I think it's actually a great offer. There also are some free plugins which are worth your attention, as they would say. There's the RO Gold Vintage Plate Reverb, which I've seen reviewed by quite a lot of people who are obviously into this kind of business that we're doing, going online and talking about audio production. And this seems to get good reviews. So there are free plugins to be had as well. But the Tape Echo is called the TD201. It's available for €19, and it's a vintage Tape Echo, and I think it's famous on it's based on a very famous Roland model. So yeah, I would head on over to Black Rooster Audio, check out their plugins. They're really good quality. I've used them in the past, and I think for analog plugins at this price, and they have the classic 1176 and LA2A emulations as well. At these prices, I think they're very affordable.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've actually got a couple of these myself, but I haven't used them in a while because I need to I've got a login issue, but that's my fault, not their fault. So I've got to sort that out and re-get all the licenses. But the one thing I just want to make the audience aware of, and I'm really chuffed that you've mentioned this. Have you seen right at the top of their offer page the All bundle?
Yes.
23 plugins, every plugin in their collection. Get all of the bundle for £96.22.
Yeah.
That's
crazy. A really good offer. Yeah.
So it's literally 23 plugins for under £100.
Yeah. And they're all a good quality. I don't know the people behind this. Again, I'm not really an expert in the business, so to speak. But I've used their plugins. I don't know who's behind this, but the quality is pretty good, especially at this price point. I mean, you're talking about maybe going on to the Wave site and buying some of their analog emulations. But as far as I can see, there's no subscription model here for Black Rooster Audio. I think you have a perpetual license, so when you buy it, you get the plugin. So there's probably no issues, for example, where you are confronted with installing a new operating system, and then you have to upgrade your Waves plan, obviously, to upgrade your plugins then to work on your new operating system. I'm not too sure how this works out with Black Rooster Audio, but from my experience in the past is if you download it and it works on a previous version of Windows or Mac OS, it's going to work on the new one too, with obviously caveats. Yeah, but generally, I think you get a perpetual license, and it doesn't have a subscription model from what I can see. So I think that's actually another attractive advantage for Black Rooster Audio plugins.
Yeah. And just a quick note here, it says here it's got extensive DAW compatibility. So it's compatible with Pro Tools, Studio One, Cubase, Reaper, Bitwig, Adobe Audition, Live, Logic, Digital Performer, and FL Studio. I'd imagine it extends beyond that, but I'll just imagine they're the ones they've tested. So it's got a good range of compatibility with different DAWs.
Yeah, it's also good to give some of these. I know they are a name, but they're not sort of as well known as Waves and Isotope and Fab Filter. I'll give a bit of love to some of these people in the business, sort of making plugins and give them a bit of love and just actually draw people's attention to the fact is, everyone would like to go out and spend, 300, 400, 500 euros on an Isotope plugin or a lot more money using buying Fab Filter products. But there are actually good, decent quality plugins to be had, which will get the job done at the end of the day for affordable prices.
Yeah.
So anyone starting their journey in audio production, or anybody just, really don't, everyone's budget is tight these days. This is actually a really good alternative. And practically, I think actually you could say that you're getting almost reasonably the same quality, audio quality when comparing to companies like Waves, for example. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Whether there's any free trials, I haven't gone into any information, looked on the site, whether you can download, there's a 14-day or 30-day trial period, I'm not certain, but even that would be a good route forward. Just download some of their analog plugins. I mean, take their 1176 plugin and then compare it against the one that Waves provide or some other people charging a lot more money and just see how it stacks up. But I've used their plugins in the past and I can thoroughly recommend them.
Yeah. And you can create a 14-day trial license.
Brilliant.
Which is, certainly worth.
Thank God you're on the call.
Absolutely. Right. Next up for me, this is a bit of a left field moment for me because it's not something I would normally discuss, but I think it's a great topic for this show, which is the TC Electronic Ampworx Vintage Series. And these are a selection of amps in a pedal. And I love this idea because it's kind of like when let's say you're a home, you do a lot of your stuff at home and you're either the artist or you're a producer and you want to generate an amp sound. I think the biggest or the most common way of doing that these days is by getting an amp sim. So you go online and buy an amp sim, but even them, they can cost a fair bit, can't they?
Absolutely.
They're going for, some of these are just going for £100 just for one amp sim. But the TC Electronic Ampworx series are a selection of amp pedals, and they come in 3 different flavors. They're vintage, so they give you a Combo Deluxe 65, which is, let's say it's black and white and resembles a brand that's may rhyme with render. So you kind of get the idea of the flavour. They've got a Jim's 45, which is an emulation of a classic British guitar head made famous by Jimi Hendrix. And then we've got the DC30, which is the another British amp classic used by the Beatles, Stones, Queen, The Who, and many more who bought this amp to stages and studios around the world. So you can kind of get an idea of what they're replicating. But I think these are great. So they're basically little pedals, probably about this size, and you get individual controls, so your bass, mid, treble. You also get things like your gain, your overall level. Some of them have got reverb. They've got boosts built in, and they've got channel switches. Now, the channel switches work slightly differently. So they're not 2-channel amps in pedal format, but they allow you to create 2 different tones inside the same pedal. So it's not like a clean tone and a dirty tone. It's basically you can set up the channels the way you like them. So if you want to set up a more clean sound and then go into a more dirty sound, you can do that. But if you want to get maybe say like a crunch going into more of a lead sound, that's the kind of vibe about it. They're not completely differently voiced channels. It's the same channel which you can shape to your tastes, and you can switch between them as you like. But they sit on your desk, and I just think they're a great little unit. They come with a singular, so there's only one impulse response, but it's an authentic Celestion impulse response that is voiced to that particular pedal. And they also have things like DI outs and all sorts, so you can run these direct into interfaces, or if you want to run them into amps, you can do it that way as well. So it's thought about. It's a really stripped back product that is very much geared towards creating a particular sound, but it does have a few of the bells and whistles which you would need to make it more fitting for, let's say, a studio environment. But also, you can have this as a backup pedal on your pedal board if you're doing a live show. So if you get a problem with your amp, you've got that. You've got that flexibility as well. So you've got an in and out, a DI which includes the cab sim, and there's a particular dial on the back which changes depending on what pedal you buy. But for example, the Combo Deluxe 65, it's a reverb. This one has a bright switch, and you've got USB connectivity as well as a power supply. So for me, I just thought it was a great little option. Just if you want to have a different tone, and let's say you don't want to go all in the box digital, then it's just something what you can have on your desk and then link it up to your audio interface and have your amp sound going direct in that way through the DI with an impulse response as well. It would save you a bit of CPU usage. You don't have to have an extra plug-in added in your chain. And there's 3 different flavours of a vintage vibe. So I quite like the look of them.
Now, that sounds really good. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and they're really quite affordable. I think they were coming in at the £129 mark. So if you think of the cost of an amp, I think even the cheap ones these days, if you get something like a 25 watter, you're probably going to get, even if you get a solid state, what are they, about 250 quid?
Yeah.
Going up. So it's just a nice little option. So just something you can keep on your desk. And if you want one of those vintage flavours, 129 quid, DI out, Celestion impulse response. You've got the flexibility to change the controls on the fly, less CPU usage. Yeah, looked like a good option to me.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the product. I assume it's a physical product. Obviously, we're talking about a physical product,
Yep.
but there's something tactile. If it has knobs and things, especially as a guitarist, I mean, we all grew up sort of, learning how to play guitar on really small amplifiers, and to get the tone you wanted, you were twisting with knobs. So maybe some people prefer that. One thing I find with using amp sims on PCs is you're always mousing around.
Yeah.
You're sort of like you're trying to change your tone, or it's just click, click, click. And sometimes you just wish, I just like to use my hand, and a bit like going back to the old days when we sat there fiddling with our amplifiers and changing the bias between the treble and the bass and the presence. I think for guitarists, that could be more intuitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the big thing for me, right, the amp sims, when I use an amp sim, the worst thing for me is always the output. because it depends on the preset you use. The output always changes. So if I take let's use amplitude for an example, and let's say I go from like a crunch and I want to get more of a lead tone and things like that. And if I click through some of the things, you've always got to go back and adjust the output depending on what preset you
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
And yeah, all right, you could go through, and I'm sure you could customize them to how you want and save the presets already pre-populated and preloaded. But with this, you wouldn't have to worry about it. All you'd have to do is get the sound right at the pedal level. And if you've got a DI out going into your interface, all you've got to then do is just obviously control the input level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You haven't got to worry about it. It's set and forget. And then once you're finished, you can add things like reverb and things like that in post. They all come with a boost, not pedal, but they come with a boost button, which adds like a almost like what do they call it? What's the Green Ibanez pedal? Tube screamer type vibe. So if you I don't think you have any controls with the boost, so that's obviously just a preset function. But if you want to have a boost in front of the pedal, then you can obviously do that as well. Yeah, quite a nice little nifty little box. Sit on your desk somewhere. I really like them. I used to have the Laney one, the IRT Pulse, which actually had a tube in it. In fact, I think it almost had, I don't know if it had one or two tubes, but it was certainly a tube one, and I used to have one of them. I might even still have it lying around somewhere, but I just like that idea of that compact little unit that you can have on your desk somewhere. Doesn't take up too much space. You can almost have it set up pretty much most of the time how you want it, and then just plug in when you want it, set the old inputs, and away you go, record some guitar tones. So yeah, I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, it sounds something similar. I used to own something from Behringer called the V-Amp, which is like a virtual guitar emulator. But the advantage was you could plug things in, and you could use a dial to choose different amplifier types. So virtually it was like an amp sim, but it was a physical unit. And I used it for a long, long time because, as I said, you had these knobs and things, and you could dial things in. You could dial in reverb. You could choose, obviously, your cabinet that you wanted to obviously go with the amp that you were choosing. And there were built-in effects like delay and chorus. So I now use amp sims, but this sounds like something similar to the Behringer V-Amp that I used to use.
Yeah. It's I think the V-Amp, wasn't that was kind of like a it was almost like a clone type thing of the old Line 6, I can't remember what they used to call it, pod something, but it was almost like they called it the kidney bean, because it always looked like that red kidney bean thing.
Yeah, I did. I started off with the one that you mentioned, the pod, and then I decided I'd upgrade. It also came with a MIDI controller. Oh, we're talking. We're just going on and on now. But I did actually come with a foot MIDI controller, which you could use obviously as to replace your pedal board. But yeah, I think these kind of things faded into the background. And of course, with DAWs and amp sims like Amplitude, and there's Guitar Rig, of course, from Native Instruments. PreSonus has its own version with Ampire. I think that became almost more popular. But maybe this is a trend back to the V-Amp and was it called Pod or Line Pod or something?
Yeah.
By Behringer. Lots of other companies have actually manufactured these things. Maybe it's a return to this kind of style.
Absolutely. So what's up next for you then, mate?
Well, this is quite funny because I picked up on something, and it really probably would get a mastering engineer like yourself more excited than it would me, predominantly being a mix engineer. But I purchased Youlean loudness meter a long time ago, about 2 years ago, when I was trying to master my own material way back in the day. And I liked it straight away. I liked it so much that I actually paid for the premium version, whatever it's called. The free version is excellent too. And there now is actually a new beta version out. The chap who actually, I think is called Youlean Nikolic. Apologies if I've murdered and destroyed the name. My pronunciation isn't that great. But yes, he's now released a Youlean loudness meter version 2.5.3 beta update. So this is actually a new version of what is an excellent product. And the free version is fantastic, as I've said. And so there are a number of improvements. Those of you who use it are familiar with it. But basically, there's going to be a feature request, a new one. There are going to be peak meters. You'll be able to import and export presets. I think the presets available on the online streaming options now means that you can set some as default. You can import and you can save presets, which actually wasn't available before. And all the usual ones are there, of course, for Deezer, for Tidal, for Apple Music, Podcast, Netflix, etc. So that's going to be another improvement. I do like the graphs because we should all listen to music, but sometimes it's good to get a visual representation of how loud your music is, or for example, the difference obviously in the dynamic range. And I think this is what Youlean loudness meter actually does very, very well. And they're going to be more loudness colors. So in other words, the split, if you look at a graph, for example, they're going to be more colors. So it'll be easier to see, obviously, the information that's living sort of lower down on the meter, information obviously that's a little bit higher. And then you'll be able to identify those areas where perhaps, it's too loud or it's too quiet, etc. And you'll be able to actually choose these colors, for example. So you can actually now go into the menu of the plugin and you can actually choose the colors to represent whatever you want to represent. There's also going to be, in the new version, more GUI customizations, which are going to be available. That's also something I think that's very, very useful. You can choose new themes. There's going to be a better GUI performance, a better DSP performance. Probably these things maybe then that's sort of aimed at maybe Pro Tool users. But yeah, I use this all the time. I think it's a fantastic plugin. And the other thing, of course, I think that once you buy the premium version, you get lifetime updates. So I think it's a great plugin, and I think it's good. And I think this guy needs a lot of support because it's an individual who's just developed this completely on his own. And I don't think this it has any huge financial backing. I don't know, but I was quite excited. I haven't downloaded the beta version yet. I do have the premium version. I'll probably wait until the final new version is released. But I can thoroughly recommend this plugin, even the free version. Might incorporate some of these new improvements. Who knows? But I think that's something to keep an eye on. And I was excited to see it.
Yeah, totally agree. I've got the free version and I use it. I use it quite a lot actually. So if I'm in Reaper, it's sat on my monitoring section, the monitoring output. So without, it sits there all the time, which is great. And I flicked through. I haven't really had a look too much into the changes. And I know you sent me some notes on it the other day, and it does look really, really good. And I think it's allowing people to be more. It's allowing people to use the plugin in the way that suits them. And certainly with some of the GUI upgrades and make it more friendly for however you want it to be with some of the color schemes and things like that. And I like the whole preset thing. And we was talking about this the other day. I think the only issue I've got with the presets is we know what streaming platforms are like. There's no one standardized loudness normalization level for any of the streaming platforms. So it does make the whole preset thing a little bit more pointless to a degree. Because if you choose something like, let's say, Apple Music and compare that against Spotify, you've got two different loudness normalization levels. So it's kind of one of those things you have to kind of almost take with a pinch of salt. But I love the plugin, I really do, and I will be getting the premium version at some point down the line because I think, like you say, it is worth. The plugin is great. The test for me is you're always looking for something that's going to create consistent results, and I think that's the thing you're going to get with this plugin. It's a loudness meter, and people might just say, "Well, it's a loudness meter. All loudness meters are fine." But you want to make sure you get consistent results because some will have slightly different, you will get slightly different measures on some against the others. But I've tested this one and this one seems to be absolutely spot on. So as loudest meters go, I think it's well worth the investment in getting this one. And if it's lifetime updates and you keep getting these new features added, then yeah, certainly a good one for me.
Yeah, I do like the drop and drag functionality. Not only does it work as a plugin, of course, within your DAW, you can use it as a standalone application. So you can actually literally drag your WAV file in, and then it will obviously analyze. I think this is only available with the premium version, but you can drag in your WAV file, and instantly you'll get all the statistics you need about your audio.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some reports, isn't there? You can export reports from the plugin as well, can't you?
Yeah, it's just a nice professional touch. I mean, obviously, if you have clients, when you send the finished file, you can also send them a nice graph, and they can obviously see visually. Um, um, Probably only important at a professional level, not somebody like me who's a hobbyist in their home studio. But then it's a nice touch with the finished product and package. You can send out these graph reports, and then you can actually people can visibly see where their audio is sitting in terms of dynamic range and loudness and all the other good things that people like to take note of.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that's another real good a good spot from you there, Tony. So well done for highlighting that one. Right, next up for me, and the last news one for me is this is a product by Fiedler Audio. Hopefully I'm not butchering that one. Fiedler, Fiedler-audio.com. So I'll leave links in the description down below. But this is a plugin they've got, or two plugins they've got, called the Dolby Atmos Composer and Dolby Atmos Composer Essentials. Dolby Atmos Composer Essentials. So these are plugins that will allow you to work in Atmos mode in any DAW. So I think that's quite important to note. So Atmos, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, it's kind of like this isn't what this is about. But there's a lot of DAWs out there that do not support Atmos at the moment. So what this allows you to do is it just gives you an option to use any DAW and create an Atmos workflow, and allows you to render out in the binaural mix for Atmos, so you can upload it to things like Apple Music, etc., and get your music set up in Atmos. You can export your work as ADM, BWF for distribution, such as Apple Music, Amazon Music, Tidal, and Netflix. It's just, I just looked at it and I thought, you know what? Well done for creating something that's opening this up for everyone. It's not going to be the cheapest. The Atmos Composer is $179, and the Essentials is coming in at $109. So it's not the cheapest thing. But if you think about Atmos, if the only option to you is either buy a plugin, say for $109 or $179, depending on what you want, or the alternative is to buy a different DAW that has got the Dolby Atmos plugin built in. It's kind of like buying a new DAW. You've then got to learn a new workflow. It's probably going to set you back a minimum of £300 anyway to buy a new DAW. To have that ability to use your existing DAW where you've got your workflow set up, I just think it was just a really good way of doing it. I think there are a few competitors offering something similar, but this was the one I looked at. This was the one I found about first, and I thought it was a really good idea to use something like this. So it's the Fiedler Audio Dolby Atmos Composer and Atmos Composer Essentials, and it just allows you to work in Atmos in any DAW. Obviously, things like sample rates. Because of the Atmos setup, you have to be very specific with what sample rates you use. So it will only offer certain sample rates, but it will give you all of the basic essentials to do any Atmos mixing and mastering. So, Tony, what's up last for you then on your last news item?
Well, I've got something from GPU Audio, and I think this is a well-known company, and they actually produce plugins for that take advantage of your GPU on your computer. I think they've been around for a long time, and the thing that I took away actually from recent news items that I saw somewhere else was that soon their plugins will be coming to Mac. And as I just recently purchased a Mac with a lot of GPU power that I don't really need, this was actually sort of music to my ears, so to speak. So again, their products aren't new, but if you go to the website and you register, at the bottom they have a little Apple icon. You can sign up for a newsletter or notification, and when their plugins are available for release on Apple, you'll be notified. So yeah, I'm quite intrigued. I'm a bit late to the game, but I'm quite intrigued by this whole thing about using plugins on your GPU. And if this trend develops, I think it's fantastic. I'm obviously freeing up your CPU to do most of the work when you're running a DAW and creating music is obviously would be a godsend. So not a massive news items. They do actually have available for Windows users, chorus and phasers and flangers. I think they might even have a free product somewhere along the line. Just checking out their website, they do actually have a free product, which I think might be not 100% certain, but they do actually have free products too. So maybe you could download a free product and see how that works for you. So all the classic plugins are there, as I said, reverb, delay, etc. And I thought it was quite interesting. I'll definitely be signing up and testing out their Mac version plugins when they're released.
Absolutely. And I've already registered for GPU audio, and it's I think the point to note from my information, and this may not be correct as of the time of recording, and may need to be clarified, but it's open at the moment for Windows users with NVIDIA graphics cards and AMD graphics cards, but the AMD driver has to be a specific Pro driver. That may have changed, but that was the last information I had. I used an AMD GPU, so I haven't really delved too deep into the GPU audio plugins as yet, because the whole issue with the driver, because I do a lot of these videos and things like that, I'm a little bit wary about having different drivers that don't match the particular graphics card, but take that for what it is, and it's certainly something you might need to look into. But it's a great concept and a great idea, and I think this is going to be a lot of things. A lot of this is going to be, it's definitely going to be paramount to anyone moving forward that can offset some of their processing to the GPU. So, like we spoke in the last episode, when it comes to the computer, we discussed about having a CPU with as much single core performance as you can get. And we discussed about the role of the GPU. And technically in audio, the role of the GPU, it's not a massive thing. However, if you have the option to have a GPU with technology like this, it can certainly save performance from your CPU. And looking at the website, they have the chorus, phaser, and flanger. They're already available to download. They have a convolver, a fireverb, and a delay. And they also have, this is news to me, they have a parametric EQ, a filter, and an exciter. They look really good, and I might have to revisit this sooner rather than later, because I'd love to check out that parametric EQ. But it also, they've mentioned they've got a tender and analyzer coming soon, as well as a distortion multi, and they've even got some dynamic processing plugins. So they've got a gator, compressor, limiter, a multi-compressor. They're all coming soon. So it looks like they're really starting to ramp up the products they're releasing. And don't forget, this is a free download. It's free open beta for all. Now, yes, it's only available at the moment for the Windows, NVIDIA, and AMD, but the Mac, I know from their social media updates, the Mac is coming very soon. And I know they've been testing this very extensively to get it out to everyone who's got a Mac with the new M1 processing. Like Tony said,
super.
It's got the GPU built in, so why not make the most of it and actually get some performance enhancements that you can do. I'm just having a look here. The Convolver, the FIR Convolver, looks as if the early access for Apple is already here. So the FIR Convolver Apple Early Access as a download. So that's already available. So if you want look into the convolution reverb and something like that, then on Mac that looks if that's available. But obviously with the space and time bundle and the modulation bundle, they are at the moment restricted to NVIDIA, but there is the AMD beta suite that's available as well. There is an update here. Looks as if it's the 2nd of June. So that's for AMD. I'm going to look into that one further. But I think what these guys are doing, I think, is amazing. It's something that I've picked up on before and something I've referenced before. The ability to offset some of the performance onto the GPU is just amazing, because if it's going to allow people with, let's say, lesser spec computers the option to start getting involved in bigger sessions, that's just the scope of that is amazing. It's just bringing down that barrier of entry all the time, isn't it? Because you don't have to then spend $2,000 on a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can get something that's got a decent CPU, but something that's got a GPU in there as well, it's going to allow you to have more access to plugins and be more CPU efficient overall. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of course, and from a creative standpoint, it means that if your computer, if plugins are taken care of by the GPU, so to speak, is that you can use your CPU to include more virtual instruments. So that helps with the creation process. I mean, the more virtual instruments you can load into a session, obviously, the more expansive your music can be and the more creative you can be as well.
And like Tony said, I think there's one premium offering at the moment, which is this is in conjunction with Vienna Symphonic Library, and it's the Vienna MIR Pro 3D Multi-Impulse Response Convolution Platform. God blimey, talk about putting a mouthful in there. But it's they've actually collaborated with Vienna, which is I think this is great. So it's taking the Vienna MIR Pro and basically putting it on steroids and allowing to have much more an in-depth impulse response, reverb, convolution, reverb that you can, you've not got to worry so much about it absolutely smashing your CPU performance all the time, which I think was great. So yeah, GPU Audio. Check that one out. We'll leave links in the description down below. They're a relatively new company. I think this has been going for a couple of years now, but they have got quite a few people involved, and I think a lot as time moves on, they will get more developers involved in the product, and it's definitely going to be the future. And I know that obviously Vienna, they've got Vienna involved. There are other companies involved. Obviously, the GPU companies. I'm trying to find some details of some of the other companies involved because they do advertise it on their website. But it's a real good one to look at. So yeah, GPU Audio. And we'll leave links in the description down below. On that note, right, let's get into the spotlight topic. I've been looking forward to this one. So, I want to see your reactions to this one. So, the spotlight topic for this episode is: what is the best DAW? No, I think it was your reaction that broke your internet. I think that's what it was. I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna stop this right here because I think me and Tony can both say with 100% wholeheartedness, the best DAW does not exist. So there is no such thing as a best DAW. But we're going to rephrase the spotlight question too: is there a best DAW for everyone? And the honest answer is no. There is no best DAW for everyone because it's one of those things that's always based on what you're going to need a DAW for. So, for example, are you a songwriter? Are you a producer? Are you mixing? Are you mastering? Are you editing? Are you doing to restoration? Are you mastering, composing? You name it. The list goes on and on and on. So it's a very short spotlight topic, and the answer is no, there is no best DAW for everyone. What's your kind of thoughts on this? When you hear that question, what's the best DAW? We've seen your reaction. It's the same reaction I get every time I see a social media post when someone asks, what's the best DAW? What's your thoughts, Tony?
Well, where do you basically start? I mean, this is like Pandora's box, isn't it? I mean, you open up the lid and God knows what's going to come out. I've only ever used two DAWs, which is Logic Pro X and Studio One Professional. So I don't have a wide range of experience. They all do similar things, but some of them do things slightly differently.
Yep.
And I think that's it's a bit like a bowl of fruit. I mean, you fancy fruit, but you don't know which kind of fruit you want. So you pick out a banana and you think, oh, I like that banana. That tastes really good. And then you pick up the kiwi fruit, which is a fruit, right? And then you hate it. It's just the taste is terrible. And I think DAWs are a bit like that, I mean, you kind of, you try out a DAW, and everything just flows intuitively. It does depend how you're coming at it. I mean, if you're a seasoned, if you're somebody who grew up on analog consoles, and you went to audio school, and you're completely familiar with all these techniques like compression and EQ and sidechain compression, you know what a leveling amplifier really is. It's a compressor, but you're familiar. Then obviously you're looking maybe for a little bit more. So if you're actually firing up GarageBand and you look at it, you're probably not too impressed. But for somebody who's a musician and just wants to record their music, GarageBand is a great starting point. You can record your music, you can actually be creative, and you can record a song, and you can even obviously export it and upload it to Spotify. So I think it does depend how you're approaching the question. It's a bit like learning to walk. I mean, how far can you go? I mean, if you just stumble and you can go a couple of 100 yards, that's your world. It's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, you can, great, look, I can walk from one end of the kitchen to the other. But then if you want to obviously conquer the great outdoors, you need to walk a little bit further than your kitchen. So you need to grow. Yeah. And obviously your legs get stronger and you can walk to mountains and this kind of thing. So that's the analogy that I would use. My experience is that they do similar things, and it really depends what you want to do. And I'm sure no matter anyone watching this, all 26 of you, anyone using a DAW would probably say they only use a fraction of what the DAW is basically capable of. So you get comfortable. You find out how to record audio. You know how to do comp editing. And then once you've learned how to do that, that's how you do it. There might be 1,000 other ways to do it more effectively within the DAW. That's exaggerating, but you stick with what you know. So I think when people say, oh, this DAW is the best DAW, what they really mean is, actually, I'm really comfortable with this DAW and I can achieve what I want to do with this DAW and it works for me.
Yeah.
And that's my take on it.
I would absolutely 100% agree. And I think it's one of these things where, every DAW is capable of doing something. The majority of things, every DAW will be able to do. But it's then when you start getting into the specialisms of what you want to do, is then you have to make a decision of, does this DAW have the right feature set for me? And I think people are looking for a DAW that has every single feature under the sun. I can tell you now, it doesn't exist. And this is a thing, and this is why people will specialize, if you look at something like a composer, it's no secret that probably the two most used DAWs for composing are Logic and Cubase, because they offer a more a feature set that is more in line with those disciplines. But let's go to the other end of the spectrum, mastering. You're looking at the most common used DAWs for mastering are Wavelab. You're probably looking at something like Sequoia, maybe even something like Pyramix. These are DAWs that are specialist mastering DAWs. But there's so many. There's so many variables. You've got to define what works for you and what feature set you want to determine what DAW is best for you. If you're looking for one and done, it doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
And I think this stems from the notion of this thing called industry standard. And I think this is the thing that I'd like people to take on board is when people say, let's say, use example, Pro Tools is often deemed as the industry standard. I will dispel that myth and say there's no such thing as an industry standard, because what is the industry? That's the first question you got to ask. The industry is so wide that you cannot say a DAW is an industry standard, because it has to be a standard amongst all disciplines, and it's not. So I would say that Pro Tools is a studio standard. Maybe that's the best way to determine it, because it's most likely to be the most used DAW in a studio environment. Doesn't make that an industry standard, because how many songwriters will use a different DAW to create the demo of a song? How many mastering engineers will use a different DAW to master the project in? And it goes so on and so on. A composer, it's unlikely, or it's very rare you find a composer who will be fully in Pro Tools. They may do aspects of it in Pro Tools, but the majority of the work will be done in something like Logic Pro or Cubase. So I don't think there is something that can be deemed an industry standard outside of what the marketing departments of a DAW may want you to believe. I think it's probably fair to say that Pro Tools may be the studio standard. But but it's kind of if you're on this chase for the best DAW, it's not going to exist. It may be a best DAW for you, but there isn't a best DAW for everyone. And I think this is the key takeaway for me. It's like Tony mentioned here that he's tried Logic Pro and he's tried Studio One. Me and Tony are very well known for using Studio One, and we're well versed in Studio One because that's what's been best for us up to our current point in time. But it doesn't mean it's the best for everyone. And I've pretty much. I'm not going to say I've tried them all because I haven't tried them all. It's impossible. But I've tried. I started off on Ableton Live Lite because that was free with my very first interface. I'm relatively well versed in Reaper, Studio One. I've got Cubase Pro 12. I've tried Harrison Mixbus. I've tried. God, blimey, what else I've tried? I've tried Logic Pro when I had a Mac. I've tried Pro Tools. I've gone through so many of them, and it's kind of like it's trying to pinpoint what is the best for you for your current needs in time. And I think this is the challenge that a lot of people will face: is they're looking for the best DAW based on everyone else's experience. And Conan Manchester, a good friend of mine, he likened this when choosing headphones. Right? He come up with this phrase saying, "It's a bit like going out and looking for a pair of shoes without trying them on."
Yeah,
and it just sums it up. That
good
statement is just, it can fit to so many different things, and it's the DAW scenario. It fits it so well because you've got to determine what's best for you, not what's best for everyone else. What's going to fit your needs and your workflow, what's going to have the main feature set, and what's going to be a design that is going to inspire you to create music. And
exactly.
It's the best way I can explain it. It's kind of like there's no point going out and looking for a pair of shoes without trying them on first. You have to try these DAWs to see what works for you and not what works for everyone else. So
yeah, I think creativity is the key thing for me. It's just a tool to get the job done. I've said this before on previous episodes of Coffee Beans and Music Scenes, that it really is. It's a tool just to get the job done. You just want to be creative and create music, and whatever helps you to get to that point in the most efficient way and most creative way is probably the answer to the question. That is the right door. That is the best door, but it means it's the best door for you. And therefore, you can categorize it as the best door. Because the other thing, of course, is loyalty. I'd like to see a statistic about brand loyalty, but I often hear people talking on the internet when they are hosting these YouTube channels, and they say, well, I use this door because it's the only door I've ever used and I know how it works.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with it. It might be, for example, workflow might be slightly convoluted, but if you're used to that workflow, and again, back to my theme here, is it enables you to get to the end point of what you want to achieve creativity, or whether you're doing it on a professional basis. It helps you get there quicker. And at the end of the day, time is money if you're working in professional. But of course, other people, if time isn't and money isn't your thing, we all want to obviously be productive and get to an endpoint as quick as we possibly can and achieve good results. So the answer is the best door is the one you're probably using, but you don't even know it.
Yeah. I mean, I would take a slightly different tact, and I would just recommend and urge everyone to at least try some different DAWs, because it's kind of, for me, the way I explain it is you can't really make a judgment on something unless you've tried it firsthand. And there's something around there's a psychological aspect here that no one ever talks about, and everyone talks about feature set, or they talk about the technical capabilities of a DAW. But going back to your point here, it's about something that allows you to focus on the music. And it's almost an unwritten thing where people don't focus so much on is the inspirational aspect of a DAW. What is going to inspire you to create music? Because this is the end goal. What's going to inspire you to get from A to B the quickest? Now, it could be the feature set, but don't discount the fact whether a DAW inspires you visually to want to use it. Because I can tell you now, there's nothing worse than getting a DAW that may have the best feature set for your needs, but if that DAW doesn't inspire you to want to create music, you're not going to create music. And this
No.
is another thing, it's almost an unwritten thing that people don't want to talk about, is the ability to have a DAW inspire you. Because there are many out there that may not have the best feature set, but if they inspire you in some way, shape, or form, it could be the layout, it could be the general GUI, the colours, for example. The amount of people who are visually inspired by a certain colour set, it's amazing. So I know I agree with what Tony says. Don't necessarily change doors for the sake of doing it. Sometimes the best DAW is the one you've got. But also don't be afraid to dip your toe in and try it. Try as many as you can. Once you've found one that you think is ticking so many of the boxes, then stick with that one for a while. Don't get so drawn on the technical aspects of a DAW. Don't forget there is an inspirational point. Find a DAW that inspires you. Try them all. And once you think, you've got one there that's got a good feature set that fits most of your needs, and it's going to inspire you to create music to get from A to B quicker, go for it. Don't feel you've got to use a particular DAW because it's the vogue DAW or it's one that everyone else uses. You've got to have one that inspires you to create music.
No, I 100% agree with that. I mean, basically, I would, and of course, most of these doors, Smudge, come with a trial period, either 30-day trial period or 14-day trial period. So that's long enough maybe to try out a couple of projects or at least find your way around the door. The other thing that I would advise is that personally, we all subscribe, but I subscribe to other educators online. In fact, that's how I subscribe to your channel, Mastering in the Box. And that's how obviously we started a relationship together. Is that when you subscribe and follow people, don't necessarily stick to those who basically are working in the same door that you're working in. Subscribe to people who are working in Ableton Live. Subscribe to people who are working in Logic Pro X or Pro Tools or whatever, because the workflows and the concepts are practically the same. And I've learned certain things by watching somebody actually carry out a production technique in Cubase. And I've applied that to the DAW that I'm using. So that's something that's very, very useful. So one shouldn't really just be stuck on my DAW is the best DAW and everything else is just complete rubbish, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I cannot stress this enough, because it's not so much about, we're going to go slightly off the topic here, but there's so much to learn from other people. It kind of goes back to that whole notion that, once again, inspiration. If you find someone who inspires you to create music, it doesn't matter what DAW they use. You don't have to follow their DAW, their DAW choices. If they give you something that's going to inspire you and a certain technique or whatever, it's irrelevant what DAW they use, because there will be ways for you to, to do that in the DAW that suits you. So I think that's a great point you've mentioned there. But it's just this, I can't stress this enough. There is no such thing as the best DAW, and I think it really is down to personal taste. And you've got to keep going back to this whole notion of what's going to allow you to create the best music that you can with the skills that you have and with the the ability that you have. That's what it's about, creating great music, not what the best DAW is. So, I think we can go on for this one for ages, but
no, I 100% agree with that.
It frustrates me when people say it's the best DAW or it's the industry standards, so you must use it. And no, you use what's going to make you feel comfortable, what's going to make you create great music. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't think there's really much more to say on that topic, is there?
No, because it is subjective at the end of the day. But I think the question was a great one, but I think we've actually probably just answered it. There are multiple tools to achieve the same job. Yeah, they're all pretty much the same, but you can probably buy a screwdriver that's manufactured in China, one that's manufactured in the US, or they might even have different names. But a screwdriver is a screwdriver, and the end result means that you'll be able to fix the screw. So, I mean, that's the way that I look at it. Maybe it's too simplistic, You could make cases for certain doors being probably more suitable for certain types of application or certain types
Yep.
of music genre. I know a lot of people just swear blind by Ableton because they either produce electronic music or EDM, and the workflow seems to obviously suit their style of music they're trying to create a lot better than others. So, but actually, to give it the the seal of approval and the best label, with a big rosette saying "best door of all time," I think that's obviously not the right answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the only other little point I just want to make is I would recommend to anyone, don't be put off by a price tag. I think this is the other one. It's kind of like, there's there isn't, whether people want to admit it or not, there are elitists out there that will say that if you use a cheaper DAW, that you're unable to create great sounding music. That is the biggest load of BS I've heard in my life. Don't be put off by a price brand. If GarageBand
No.
suits your needs, use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of like, just use it. Reaper. If a $60 Reaper license is all you need, go for it. You don't have to. You don't have to have the latest and greatest. It's got to be about what enables you to create what you want to create in the best way possible. And it's like, it's almost seen as if you have a light version of a DAW that you can't do what you need to do. If you use Pro Tools first, which is the free variant of Pro Tools, and if Pro Tools suits your needs, and if it suits it gets you inspired, and that's the way to use it. And if you can work with the limitations of a light product, use it. There's no need just to get the latest and greatest just because someone else says, well, this is the best DAW. I can tell you, just to reiterate, it's not the best DAW. It may be the best DAW for them. Doesn't mean it's going to be the best DAW for you. So, try them all. So just to recap, there is no best DAW for everyone. There is no best DAW. It's down to you to find what's going to be suitable for your needs. Test them. I think Tony's made some great points about trying to get the most from the DAW you have. And I would add in, if there are some specific bespoke use cases where you need to go outside of the DAW, don't be afraid to do it. We both use Isotope RX, for example, for certain tasks. And there are certain applications where a particular DAW may not be suitable for my needs at a given moment in time. So I have a couple that I can rely on that I know well. But I suppose it's kind of, you don't want to be engulfed with trying to use 10, 12 DAWs. If you're going to use multiple, pick a few, just a couple that's going to be able to cover all bases and get really good with them. But just make sure they inspire you, and don't choose one because someone else says it's the best. It may be the best for them. It might not be the best for you. Hi folks, Smudge here, and thanks for watching this latest episode of Coffee Beans and Music Scenes. We thoroughly enjoy putting these episodes together, so we hope you've really enjoyed this one. It was certainly great fun for me to get Tony in that way with the spotlight topic. If you've got any suggestions for upcoming episodes, then please let us know in the comments down below. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.